Welcome to the Thought Leaders Podcast. I'm your host, Isabella Sanchez Castañeda. Let's jump right in. I'm here today with a thought leader on sales and hiking, Seth Prezant. I will let him introduce himself a bit, but I'm so excited to talk about all of these different things and especially this intersection that you've carved for yourself of hiking and sales. And so I want to know the story of the first time you ever had to make a sale.
Wow. Well, first of all, Isabella, thank you so much for having me on. This is super exciting. And you did a great job. Seth Prezant is my name. So my first sales memory, and I speak about this often because it's true. And it's something that's like so dear to me. I live here in Fort Lauderdale now, and I grew up, I was born in New York, but pretty much grew up in Miami. And in Miami, we have mango trees everywhere in everyone's backyard. So one summer, where the time the mangoes usually start coming out, my friends and I were just like roaming the streets, and the mango trees hang over sometimes people's yards, and they fall, and sometimes like you could just reach up and grab one. It's like great. It's like paradise. And I had this idea like, hey guys, what happens if we just like collect as many mangoes as we can and we sell them? And my friends are like, that's the dumbest idea ever. Who's going to buy from a bunch of kids? I think we were about 8 years old, 10 maybe at the time. So I'm like, all right, well, who's in? And one of my friends said, yeah, I'll do it with you. So we collected as many mangoes as we could reach. We're like getting on each other's shoulders. We're grabbing the mangoes. We may have hopped a couple fences. I'm not going to admit to anything. And we took all the mangoes and we went to this supermarket. And my friends are like, this no one's going to buy from us. We're just kids. And on the way there, we're like sucking mangoes. We have mango juice hanging from our face. We're sticky. If you've never had a mango, I mean, the juice is sticky. And we just walk in, and I ask for the manager. The manager comes out, and about 15 minutes later, we walk out with a wad of cash. And that was my first sale. And that literally put the sales taste in my mouth. And I'll never forget that.
Do you think that it was just something innate? I think sales skills are something people say they're either born with or they're not. And from that story, it might have been, a little bit more natural to you. So what do you say to folks who are like, oh, I didn't get that gene. I don't have that same level of sales skill.
I think it came from boredom. We were just like some kids, and we were just looking for fun things to do. And maybe it came, my father was an entrepreneur. He was a business owner. My grandfather was a business owner. My uncle was a business owner. So maybe just kind of through seeing them and spending Saturdays at my father's shop and just watching him, maybe it just kind of seeped in. But yeah, there was always a little hustle in me. Yeah.
And how did you then go on to foster that and make it your whole career?
So I think it just never went away. I didn't consciously think about it, but I didn't grow up in a very wealthy family. We were kind of middle class, and my father worked very hard, and I never felt comfortable going to my parents and asking them for money for things. And I learned early on that I could make my own money. I can make money and use my money for the things that I want. And I don't have to ask my parents. I always saw how hard they work, and I just felt like I didn't want to bother them when I can do something myself. So throughout life, I mean, I can go through all the stories. I remember I was always hustling in high school. I would make cinnamon sticks. And for those out there that don't know what they are, they're basically toothpicks, and you soak them in cinnamon oil. And I would sell like, I don't know, 20 sticks for like $2, $3. always making money. I started working at a very young age. I I worked at the Gap, was the top sales rep at the Gap. It's my claim to fame. And I just started like enjoying the fact that I could sell anything and I could make money. So whether it's cinnamon sticks or, you know, Gap polo shirts, or sticky mangoes that I kind of snatched off the street. I just had this ability to be independent, and I like that.
Wow. And I really appreciate that you said you can sell anything. And often when people think of sales, if it isn't something that comes naturally to them, their first instinct is to blame the product and to say, "Oh, it's not it's just not sellable. It's not easy to sell. It's too high ticket or too low ticket or it doesn't sell well." And how do you start to kind of break down those barriers or those thoughts that keep people from really seeing you can sell anything?
So it's mindset. I was just having this conversation yesterday. One of the people in my community were talking to me about imposter syndrome. And we hear that so much. And I'm like, I don't want to hear imposter syndrome. It's mindset. That's what it is. And there's a saying, whether you think you can or whether you think you can't, you're right. So how do you get the right mindset? How do you build that confidence? Well, just like anything else, when you first do something that you've never done before, you're gonna suck. I mean, there's no two whether it's riding a bike or before you're ever married, you don't know what marriage is going to be. You could, take all the classes, but until you're in that marriage, you don't know. Same thing for having kids, riding a bike, starting a business, starting a podcast. You are a perfect person to talk to this because no one's good on their first podcast. I'm sure Howard Stern, his first show had to have just sucked. And so building that mindset comes from experience. It comes from learning, right? Learning from your mistakes. That's part of it. You got to have fun. I think, you got to really just enjoy it. And then when you start enjoying it and you're learning and you have that experience and you start getting better and better, then you feel naturally good about what you're doing. And if you don't do something that's perfect, then you're at least confident enough to be, that's okay. I'm an imperfect, perfect human being.
I can kind of predict that there will be a listener who hears that and goes, they're terrified. They don't even know what that first step is, but they have a business, they have something that they're really passionate about. Is their first step role playing? Is their first step hiring a sales rep? How can they really take that first leap forward to get more comfortable selling?
So sales, to me, sales is something that we naturally do. We just don't think about it. And I'm going to explain in a second. So number one, we naturally are all salespeople, and I'll prove it in a second. But on top of that, the actual skills can be learned and honed. It is a skill set because sales is not about selling something that someone doesn't want. Sales is really about educating, guiding, and communicating. It's not about manipulating. But our first sales that we ever do, in a way, is a little manipulative. And it starts when we're kids. Everybody has sold when their parents said it's time to go to bed, Isabella, and you didn't want to go to bed. I bet you were the best salesperson in the world, and everyone else. There's nothing like a kid trying to delay or not go to bed. That is the best salesperson. We sell when we want something from our parents, and we're trying to convince them. We are selling. We're selling an idea. We're selling ourselves. We're selling our friends. I know you don't want me to go out, but please, I'm trying to make friends at school, and they're really nice, and their parents will be home, and they're going to have pizza, and we're going to play like Connect Four. You're selling. So if we first recognize that we really are natural sellers, we just might not be the salespeople that's icky. We don't want to be. No one wants to be a used car salesperson. No one wants to be, one of those salespeople that are portrayed on TV. So we try and say, oh, I can't do that. I can never talk that way. Well, you're not supposed to. You shouldn't. That's not sales. Sales is really something that we all naturally are good at. We just got to go back and recognize what those skills were and harness them, grow.
What are those skills like kind of distilled? Is there bucket skills? Is it all communication? Is it all, learning the features versus the facts? What are those kind of overview of the skills?
I love that question because I created something called the Mighty Four, and then I added one. So it's the Mighty Five. And these are basically the overall characteristics that make a good salesperson. And then each one you could break down a little bit. So number one in the Mighty Four, and five, the fifth one will be a bonus. Number one is curiosity. In order to be good at sales, to me, you need to be curious because when you're curious, you learn. When you're curious, you make your prospects feel seen and heard because you're making it about them and not about you. So curiosity is number one. Number two, intentionality. It's really important to be intentional with the things that you do. And when you're intentional, you're putting thought and time, once again, into your prospects, into your customers, into helping guide them. So intentionality is super important, and it's a skill that you could learn. Three, tenacity. Now, a lot of people will argue you either have tenacity or you don't. Yes, it helps when you are naturally tenacious, but it's something that I have taught before. Because again, this is something that human beings, we all are tenacious. It's just finding out where have you been tenacious in the past and how do you bridge that gap? How do you bring that tenacity into what you're doing? The fourth one, what is the fourth one? Wait, so we got curiosity, we have intentionality, we have tenacity, um, we have excelling at the basics. What is excelling at the basics? There is no magic bullet. There is no magic formula. There's no magic framework. There is no magic steps. The only magic is in excelling when you excel at the basics and do it every day consistently. That is where the magic happens. And that's with anything in sports and entertainment. If you want to be a physician or an attorney, a salesperson, excel at the basics and you will be wildly successful. The fifth one, this was something my daughter, she used to say, Dad, you're so extra. You're so extra. And I didn't realize it was a double, it was like a little bit of a compliment and a little bit of a slap. But what I realized is that the best salespeople are extra. You put in that 1% extra time, effort, care. You go that little extra to say thank you, a little extra to reach out to clients, even when you have nothing to sell, a little extra to write a thank you card, a little extra to say, you know what, I have an idea I just want to share with you and see what you think about it. Be extra. There's the Mighty Five.
Love it. And I love the reminder to be extra. I think a lot of folks who carve their own path through entrepreneurship or carve their own path through sales are afraid to be extra. But like you just said, that's what makes them the best. That's what makes them stand out. And almost like a permission slip. We're writing a permission slip to whoever's listening that they can be extra and they can use it to their advantage.
I love that. It is that I love that. It's permission to be extra, permission to be imperfect, permission to have fun. That is kind of like those are the things that are going to help you be successful in almost anything you do.
And how are you distilling this for your community? You have your Hike Your Sales community. And are you teaching these five in a group environment? What's the best way to learn these skills if someone identifies that they're lacking one?
Sure. So, I call my sales community the never ending masterclass because you don't just learn a skill and then move on. You have to learn it and apply it and understand it and practice it and practice it and role play it until you master it. And only then can you say, okay, I've arrived. And even after that, you still want to you want to keep your skills up. So I created I when I started Hike Your Sales, I didn't want to be just another sales trainer or coach. There are amazing sales coaches and trainers out there, and they do wonderful things and they teach what has worked for them. And it could work for many others. What I wanted to do is create a community where I am the guide and the host, but where people could learn from each other. So in my community, we have, say, someone in SaaS sales that is learning from someone who has a dairy farm and they are selling ice cream. And it's amazing the crossover because it doesn't matter, like we said earlier on, a good salesperson could sell practically anything. So if you could pick up something from a dairy farmer and apply it to what you're doing in tech sales or vice versa, that is the best way to learn. We're learning from each other as a community the way that we learn for thousands of years. We learn in communities. So the way that I set my community up is it's industry agnostic. Anybody, we have CEOs, we have founders, we have individual contributors, and we learn. We role play twice a month. We have one mini masterclass every single month. I do office hours, ask me anythings, and some things are very structured. Intentionality, we're very intentional, and some things, let's role play. Let's see where it goes. So it's a never-ending class on curiosity, on intentionality, on all the basics that you need to succeed.
What do those role plays usually look like? Is it, for example, the dairy farmer practicing on the tech SaaS
Yeah.
salesperson, or what can give us a taste?
Sure. So I'll give you we actually did a role play, and so this the dairy farmer, she's a CEO and she owns a dairy farm, produces her own ice cream, and she was having trouble reaching, calling in, a little nervous calling into the other CEOs, trying to get distribution with her ice cream. So I said, all right, let's right now, and this is in front of everyone else that's on the call. I mean, you have to be a little vulnerable. Let's do it. I'm going to be a CEO of a facility, and you're trying to get your ice cream in, and you give me a cold call out of the blue, ring, ring. And she goes, what? I went, is that how you answer the phone? She goes, no, I'm not ready. I went, we're ready. Let's do it. And we started role playing. And once we're done role playing, and I help guide the conversation a little bit, this is where we learn together. So first I start by asking everyone, what did you hear that made you go, that was cool. I just learned something. I would like to use that. We talk about what was good about the call. Then we talk about, were there any areas of opportunity that, looking back, right, rewinding it, what maybe could have been done different? So this is before I speak, because I don't want to be, there's so much knowledge that everyone has, and I want them to share it. And by the time they're done, I'm just shaking my head going, yeah, I have very little to add, because when you're listening in, we're all customers too. When you're listening in, you're able to give really great feedback. And then, of course, I share some tips and tricks and things that we can do. And a lot of it is mindset. I'm like, you're a CEO, right? She's like, yeah. I'm like, you have people calling you. Like, do you buy products and services? Sure. Do you buy products and services to help your business grow? Yeah. Who do you buy that from? People. Oh, you mean like people who are calling into the CEO? I said, you're a CEO. CEOs are just like you. Just that reminder, that permission, that little tweak in mindset made her go, yeah, you're right. So that's an example of how we role play. We try and role play twice a month. And I encourage everyone, if you're not role play, if you're in sales, every single day before you start your calls, call a friend, call a colleague, call your sales leader or manager, and just knock out one or two role play calls. Get that muscle memory, shake the little cobwebs off, warm up just as you would if you were doing any sport. You did cross country. Did you just start running? No, you probably did jumping jacks, stretches, whatever. You didn't just start running cold. We shouldn't do the same thing in sales. We need to warm up.
That is so good. I have not heard that before. So even just calling a friend are you asking that friend like, hey, ask me a hard question? Or is it just, let me, practice this on you?
You could do it any way you want. I mean, it's best if you're like, hey, here's a scenario,
Mm-hmm.
and I want you to be a little difficult. Give me some pushback, or just surprise me. I mean, sometimes when I do role play, people are surprised because they'll ring, and let's do one right now together. Okay. So
Perfect.
you're making a sales call. Maybe you notice someone on LinkedIn has been checking out your profile, and you're just going to call in to the cell phone, and let's do it. Ready? Are you okay with that?
Yes, I'm a little nervous, but yes, I love it.
All right, great. Let's do it. Ring.
Hello.
No,
Wait,
actually, yeah, no,
I
I'm
have
I'm
to
gonna
ring?
answer. You
Okay.
ring me.
All right. Ring.
Hello?
Hi, how are you doing, Seth? I'm calling from Issa Media Inc. Do you have a minute?
I'm so sorry. I actually don't, but thank you. And if you can take me off your list.
Oh, I don't know what to say to that. I feel like I would immediately be like, okay, bye.
Okay. Yeah. All right, let's try it again.
Okay. Ring.
Hello?
Hi, this is Isabella with Issa Media Inc. Seth, do you have a second?
I don't.
Still don't know what to say. I'm like so on the spot.
So
Yeah.
it is, and this is great because this is how most of cold calling goes.
Hmm.
And oftentimes, especially when you're first starting out in sales, or if you're especially founders are like, you are the first line in sales. And yet it's sometimes some of the scariest things for founders because that might not be your skill set. So we help a lot of founders and CEOs early stage with their sales calls because that is how most of the sales calls are going to go. Where'd you get my number?
Hmm.
These
LinkedIn.
right. Oh, perfect. So these are, and it is, and I'm you're probably feeling a little hot right now, a little maybe sweaty because even though you know it's a role play,
Yeah.
this feels like it starts making you feel a little nervous.
Mm-hmm.
That's so many people, even salespeople today, are not picking up the phone. They're not making the calls. They're not used to it, especially the I hate being that old guy saying the younger people, but you younger people are used to texting, not picking up the phone and calling. So when you do have to pick up the phone and call, it is uncomfortable, it is unnatural. It's something that could be learned. It's something that you can feel really comfortable doing, but it takes practice, practice, practice before you get the confidence, confidence.
Absolutely. And I
Yeah.
do think that I've heard and I've experienced, and I've even said, oh, it's just not something that comes natural, or it's not something that feels good. But like you're saying, why would it feel good? Why would anything feel natural if you've never done it, if you've never practiced it? And so, such a good reminder and such a valuable resource that you give your community to be able to do that in a comfortable environment so that when they do call and the person says, how'd you get my number? They know how to respond. They don't freeze.
Yeah, when you join the community, you're going to know what the skill sets are in order to be successful in sales. You're going to, and by the way, you're going to notice I'm taking something that I've heard you say before and before, what you know, what you believe, and what you feel.
Mm-hmm.
And I love that because what you're going to believe is you're going to believe in yourself. You're going to believe that you can do this, and you're going to feel a very safe environment to do it in, so that it's okay when you stumble. It's okay when you don't have the right answers. It's okay when you don't know what to say. Having that safety when you're working for a sales organization and you're struggling in a certain area, a lot of people are scared, sometimes rightfully so, to go to their sales leader and say, hey, I'm struggling with this. Can you help? They're afraid they're going to get fired. What do you mean you need help? Yeah, we hired you to do this job. Good sales leader would be, thank you. Thank you for bringing this to me, and I would love to work with you on it. That shows me you want to learn, but not everyone feels comfortable doing that. So our community gives that safe space to learn, to fail, to succeed.
I really appreciate that and how, open you are to the community, bringing those up. Something I didn't necessarily hear you say was scripts. How do you feel about sales scripts?
So this is interesting because I am right now working. I'm going to be all right. Cat's out of the bag. I'm going to be offering very soon sales training that ties in improvisation around it. I did a drop-in class a while ago at an improv a studio, and I had so much fun. But as I'm improving for comedy, for fun, I'm starting to make these connections between improv and sales. So much so that I like almost stopped what I was doing improving because the connection between the two was so powerful. And in sales, I think at the beginning it's important to work on your scripts, just like working on your email scripts, working on your voicemails. At the beginning, it's so important because that's the foundation. You just don't have naturally that ability to put it all together at first. So I really believe at the beginning, scripts are super important. However, when you get someone on the phone, life is not going to go as you scripted it because you can't script life. That job's already taken, right? So you have to be able to, a really good salesperson has to be able to have the most incredible active listening skills. You have to really work with the person almost like improv and listen and be able to respond in the right ways based on what your prospect is saying or sharing or maybe hinting to you. And that's something you can't script. You have to be well versed, you have to be intentional with understanding your prospect, understanding your product or service. But once you have that, now make your prospect feel heard and seen. Guide the conversation through really good open-ended questions. And then you're going to guide, you're not going to force, you're not going to guide your prospects to a place where they're like, I think I really can use this, or this is something that I think I need. Tell me more about it.
Yeah. And you brought up curiosity before with that active listening, being able to pick up on different things, ask different pieces. And so much of that comes from being open and curious. And you're not necessarily able to do that with a script if you're trying to, put someone in a decision tree and say, oh, did they say, this scenario or this other scenario rather than what's right in front of you. So that's so interesting. I know that scripts can be hotly debated in sales. So when can people find out about the improv workshop for sales?
I'm going to be posting on LinkedIn and on our website once I have it all formalized. What I'm going to be doing is working really mostly with sales teams in organizations. So it's not going to be one-on-one, but we are going to work with organizations and come in, take their sales teams, and work with a lot of sales leaders. It does start with the top. And you mentioned scripts. There are companies that are still like, no, this is the script. You got to stick with the script. And so many salespeople don't feel like that script resonates with who they are. Finding your tone, finding your voice is super important. And that's why a lot of sales trainers that teach what has worked for them doesn't necessarily translate to someone else because everyone's personality is different. I mean, I have worked with salespeople who they please forgive me if you're listening and you know who you are. They have put me to sleep listening to them, listening in on their calls, and yet they were the top producer because it worked for them. They just had that little magic something that worked for them. And then you have these extroverts that are like, "Hey, how are you, buddy?" And just like, and it works for them. So I will always say, like, here's the foundation, here's the script. Then keep reworking it until it feels right for you. It has to be authentic. If it doesn't feel authentic to you, I promise you, the person on the other line who has nothing but your tone and your words they will pick up on it subconsciously. Their primal brain will smell your commission breath a mile away if you are not authentic. So start with a script and then build out from it until you find your authentic self.
We've kind of come back to the same point a couple times of just that permission to be yourself and that permission to explore, be extra, be curious. And it's such a wonderful reminder, obviously in sales, but just in general. And so I just really appreciate that you bring us that message today, and that I hope that the person listening to this is like, yeah, I can be good at sales while still being myself and not having that fear around it as much.
Yeah, I learned not so long ago how we could be perfect and yet still have room to grow and learn. And those two kind of conflict with each other. How could you be perfect just as you are right now at this moment and still have learned to grow? But they do coexist together. When you feel you're imperfect, you're not going to be your authentic self. You're going to have the mindset of I can't do it, I don't deserve it, I don't want to bother this person by calling them. But if you feel like, wait, I am perfect right now, I'm perfectly imperfect, and I could grow and learn, but I have things that I could share. Just remember, you're always at least 15 minutes, 15 days, or 15 years ahead of someone else. And even if it's 15 minutes ahead of someone else, you have something to share and learn and give back.
That is perfect. And such a wonderful way to start winding down this interview. And I know that folks are going to want to hear more from you, want to get into your community. So, what are the best ways for people to connect with you?
So I post a lot of content, free content on LinkedIn, and you could look me up, Seth Prezant, my name, SethPrezant on LinkedIn. You could also go to my website, which is hikeyoursales.co, hikeyoursales.co. And those are the two best places to find me and to learn more about what we do and the communities that we have for individual contributors and how we help sales organizations and create specialized communities just for their industry and for their company.
Amazing. All of that will be in the show notes. Thank you again for joining us.
Isabella, thank you so much. This was a lot of fun.
Oh, good. Thank you.